Before we start this Maamar, this is the Maamar Machar Chedesh, which the Rabbi gave out for Beis Iyar Tafshin Nun Aleph. Just a quick introduction of the general idea, the way it works with Maamarim. In the Maamarim of the Rabbeim, and in general in the teachings of Chassidus, and beforehand in the teachings of Kabbalah, usually they were given over more Baal Peh than Biksav, was given over more orally, teacher to student. Reb Shimon ben Yochai, when he wrote the Zohar, he didn't write the Zohar, but he taught it to his students, and he told his students to write it down. The Arizal didn't write, the Kisvei Arizal weren't written by the Arizal, they were taught by the Arizal to Reb Chaim Vital, who wrote it down. The teachings of the Baal Shem Tov were also not written down by the Baal Shem Tov. They were taught to the students who later on wrote them down, and the same thing with the Maggid. The Alter Rebbe is the first one to write a Sefer in Chassidus, and the Sefer is Tanya, that's the Torah Shebiksav of Chassidus. But even despite that, in later generations, and by the Alter Rebbe himself, generally Chassidus was given over in a way of Torah Shebal Peh, and the Torah Shebal Peh is a teacher teaching the student. And one of the reasons perhaps for that is the way the Alter Rebbe explains in the Akdama to Tanya, that when a teacher teaches his student, he's talking to him, he knows who he's talking to, and he's teaching the student what he has to do. In Kabbalah, and more so in Chassidus, that the whole idea of Chassidus is teaching a person how to behave, how to live his life the way the Eibishter wants. Then that when a teacher teaches, it's something which is so much stronger and so much more powerful. If it's written, it's a general thing. However, in Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe explains in the Akdama to Tanya that even the writing, even the Torah Shebiksav, the written Chassidus is also written as a Rebbe teaches to his students, to the Chassidim. Now after that Akdama, the general way that it was by the Maamarim throughout the generations, most of the Maamarim that were given over by the Rabbeim were given over as Torah Shebal Peh. There were set times for saying a Maamar. Friday night was one of the set times. Shabbos, a Yom Tov, v'chayetze bazeh. By the Rebbe, the general set times for giving over Maamarim, for saying Maamarim, was besides for the Chassidish Yema, the Pagras. By the Rebbe, the Maamarim were given over mostly by Fabrengens, and on a Shabbos by a Fabrengen, or on a Yom Tov, etc. Now there's something that was started already by the Frierdiker Rebbe, and continued on by the Rebbe, which is the idea of editing Maamarim. In the time the Frierdiker Rebbe started it from after he left Russia for a few years, and then it stopped, and then it started again in the last few years before the Istalkus, before Tafshin Yud. And what was the idea? To take an old Maamar, to rewrite it in a way of Torah Shebiksav, if we want to put it like that, and to give it out to Chassidim to learn in honor of a Yom Tov. The Rebbe continued doing this with Maamarim of the Frierdiker Rebbe throughout the year of Tafshin Yud Aleph. I mean, throughout Tafshin Yud and throughout Tafshin Yud Aleph, till the end of till the end of Tafshin Yud Aleph, and later the Rebbe would sometimes be Magia Maamarim right away after they were said, or a few weeks later. Mostly in Tafshin Mem Zayin and Mem Ches in the later years, the Rebbe started the idea of editing old Maamarim that had been said at an earlier time and being Magia them in honor of a specific day, of a specific Yom Tov. This Maamar that we're going to learn was said by the Rebbe in a very important time. It was in the year Tafshin Chav Ches, on Erev Rosh Chodesh Iyar, Shabbos Mevarchim. Now we know the year Tafshin Chav Ches, there was a lot of Giluyim. It was something that came directly after the 6-day war. This was almost a year after the 6-day war, which the Rebbe called the Shofar Gadol, the Shofar of Mashiach. And in a sense, even more than that, when the Rebbe was Magia this Maamar, It was in the year Tavshin Nun Aleph. This was the first Maamar that came out Muga after Chav Ches Nisan, after the Rebbe came out with the statement to the Chassidim, to Talz was ihr kennt und zet Rab bringen Mashiach in Bepeil Mamish, do everything you can to bring Mashiach. In a certain sense, just like the Siches of that time, were directives in exactly what we have to do and what has to be done in order to bring Mashiach, the Maamarim that were given out then. And perhaps in a specific way, this Maamar, starting this Maamar, in a very special way, is a directive of what has to be done in order to bring Mashiach, what it means to bring Mashiach. Now the Maamar was given out in honor of Beis Ziyar, the Yom Huledes, the birthday of the Rebbe Maharash. The Rebbe Maharash is the idea of Lechatchila Riber. What's the meaning of Lechatchila Riber? The Rebbe taught various times that the statement that the Rebbe Maharash said was, "The Welt sagt, man kann nicht darunter geht man a Riber, und ich sage as Lechatchila Riber." The world says, if you can't do it in a direct way, then you do it in a way that's beyond nature. And the Rebbe Maharash says, I say that Lechatchila Riber. And the Rebbe various times asked the question, what's the difference what the world says? If the Rebbe Maharash wants to say Lechatchila Riber, say Lechatchila Riber. What does it make a difference, and why does the Rebbe Maharash have to preface the statement with what the Welt says? And the Rebbe explains that the Rebbe Maharash is not just telling us Lechatchila Riber, go away from the world. The whole point that the Rebbe Maharash is saying is that in a world that says Lechatchila Runter, in that world there has to be Lechatchila Riber. And to understand that and to explain it a little bit more, there's a statement that the Rebbe very often brings from the Rebbe Maharash. The Rebbe Maharash in a Maamar explains that many people think that the world is an Achiza Sinayim. It's not real. Let's understand that idea. A person who didn't learn Chassidus, he looks at the world, this is what it's all about, the world. The Gashmistic world, this is the Metzias. If he knows there's also Ruchnis, he knows there's also an Eibishter and there's also spirituality, that's something else. That's not part of the world. The world is a world. You have to make Parnasa, and you have to be involved with the world in order that there should be something, whatever it is that I need. And then there's also Ruchnis, there's davening, there's learning. Chassidus, when a person learns Chassidus, what does he learn? Einheit milvader, there's nothing else but the Eibishter. There's one thing that exists in the world, and that's the Eibishter, that's the Lakus B'Pshittas. The reality is Hashem, and the reality is Torah and mitzvahs and davening and learning Torah. Based on someone who learned Chassidus, he can make a mistake, and he can think that means that the world is an Achiza Sinayim, it's not real, it's like an imagination, it's like something which is a mirage. It's not a real thing. That could be the maskana, that could be what a person decides based on what he learned Chassidus. Comes along the Rebbe Maharash in a Maamar, and the Rebbe Maharash says it's not so. What's the proof? Because it says in the Torah, Bereshis bara likim es hashamayim v'saaretz. Hashem created heaven and earth. And we know that it's brought down in the Ramban on the Torah and in various other places that the words Bria in Lashon Kodesh means creating something from nothing. Now if the world is ayin, it's not real, then how could we say bara? The Eibishter created, there's nothing there. Created means he made something. If the world isn't real, there's no world and there is no something. Another proof that Rebbe Maharash brings from halacha. In halacha it says, there's a Mishnah that says that there's two people who are malaktim kishuim. They gather, they harvest pumpkins on Shabbos. They're malaktim kishuim, they harvest cucumbers on Shabbos. And there's two types of people. One of them is chayiv, he gets killed, and one of them is pater, he didn't do anything wrong. What are the two? The one who asa maisa, he did an action, he actually did it. He's chayiv, he gets skilla. He's pater, someone who's only making an imagination, he's only doing something which isn't real. He's only doing an achiza seinayim, something that it looks as if he did it, he's pater, he's exempt. So Rebbe Maharash says, 1 second. If the whole world is an Achizas Einayim, what's the difference between these two? Why do you say the one who did something, he actually cut it, he picked the cucumbers on Shabbos, he's chayiv, it's Achizas Einayim, nothing ever happened? What are you going to tell me? That also the skilla is Achizas Einayim, the stone is also not real. So Rebbe Maharash says you can't say that because then the whole Torah is not real. Chas v'shalom. The Torah said that there's reward and punishment. Says the Rebbe Maharash, no, obviously there is a real world. Achizas Einayim, Achazas Einayim is patur because he didn't do it in this physical world. If a person does something in the physical world, which is Chas v'shalom Chilul Shabbos, he desecrated Shabbos. In the physical world, he gets killed because he did something, because there is a real world. But what is the reality of the world? Bereishis bara likim. There is a real world, but the reality of this real world is the fact that Hashem created it. The reality of the world is a lakus. And that's what the Rebbe Maharash explains. The world is real, but its reality is a lakus. And that's the meaning of the statement, lechatchila riber. It's not lechatchila riber, don't take the world at all into consideration, pretend there is no world, or there is no world. No. Lechatchila riber means you go in a world which says lechatchila runter. You go in a world and you realize and you take into consideration what the world says. And it's in that world that you know the reality is that world itself that thinks that you have to take it into consideration. But really it itself is a lakus, and therefore lechatchila riber, there's nothing that holds me back from doing what I'm supposed to do. And this was not just the Rebbe Maharash, a statement, this is the way the Rebbe Maharash lived his life. If we look a little bit at the life of the Rebbe Maharash, the life of the Rebbe Maharash was in a way that he lived in this physical world, different than any of the other Rabbeim. The Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Maharash's father, there's a saying that was said by the Rabbeim, that there were two houses in Lubavitch, one next to each other on the same street, in fact next door to each other. In one house, they didn't even have covers for the furniture. The way they worked is they had wooden furniture, and they would have cloth covers on the furniture in order to make it a little bit respectable. In the Tzemach Tzedek's house, there weren't even covers for the furniture, and the curtains were faded. And right next door there was a house with all the gashmias, with the most exquisite, the most amazing things that there are. That was the Rebbe Maharash. The Rebbe Maharash used by the Rebbe Maharash, everything was gold. And when someone asked one of the chassidim of the Rebbe Maharash, why does he do that? Why is everything gold? Even the cigarette lighter was made out of gold. And so he said, Petach, full. Who else? This was the Rebbe's great-grandfather. He said, who else was gold created for? Which means the Rebbe Maharash's life was one that he lived with the world, and yet in that world it was felt that it is a real world, but that real world is a lakus. After this Akdama, in a sense, this is very much what we're going to learn in this Maamar, which is based on a Maamar of the Rebbe Maharash. We're going to learn in this Maamar, what does Mashiach mean? And this is something which the Rebbe was teaching us always, but specifically after Chavches Nisan Tafshin Nun Aleph. When the Rebbe was teaching us, it's now up to us to bring Mashiach. It doesn't mean to go outside of the world, doesn't mean to find a different world, doesn't mean to go somewhere else. It means to take this world and realize that the reality of the world is a lakus, is Mashiach. And that's what we're going to learn in the Maamar, which is an amazing lesson and directive to us, how to bring Mashiach into the world. So let's start the Maamar inside. It's starting with the pasuk, a pasuk which very often is brought by the Rabbeim as a Dibra Maschil, as the beginning of a Maamar when Erev Rosh Chodesh is on Shabbos. That's the Haftarah that we read. And this is the Maamar, this is the way this Maamar starts. It was said on an Erev Rosh Chodesh Iyar, which was on Shabbos. Vayomer Yehonasan Maamar Chodesh v'nifkadeta ki paked meishavecha. Vayomer lo Yehonasan is talking the story that Yehonasan said to David, tomorrow will be Rosh Chodesh. It was when David wanted to know if he should run away from Shaul or not, because Shaul was trying to kill him, and he wanted to know, is he really going to try to kill him? And so they made up a deal, Yehonasan and David. Yehonasan says to David, go hide. Tomorrow is going to be Rosh Chodesh, when the king makes a big meal and everyone comes to the meal. You will be remembered because your place will be empty. You won't be by the meal, and so the king will realize, because David was Shaul's son-in-law, he would sit right next to Shaul. He had a special set place by the meals, and specifically by the Rosh Chodesh meal. Shaul will realize that you're missing. Once he realizes you're missing, and that way he'll remember you, let's see how he reacts, and based on that we'll know whether you should run away or not. And they continued making a sign, which we'll learn Mitzvah Hashem later in the Maamar. Maybe Admar Marash Bal Yemulad is the Beis Year. But Maamar El Pasuk Zem, and so the Rebbe Marash, who's the Bal Yemulad of Beis Year, he brings in his Maamar, which starts with this Pasuk. Mashapirish Rashi Ala Pasuk. The Rebbe Marash brings Rashi that says, V'nifkadeto Lashon Zikaron. V'nifkadeto and Yipaked are actually the same shayresh, they're the same root, the words Pei Kuv Dalet. But the word V'nifkadeto means Zikaron, you'll be remembered, which means that Shaul will remember, will realize where it will think about you. Why? Because he'll see your place is empty. V'yipaked u'lashon chisaron. Yipaked means missing, lacking, that your place is empty. Pirush v'nifkadeto ki yipaked meishavecha. And what does it mean v'nifkadeto ki yipaked meishavecha? Talidei she yipaked makim meishaveh shel David. Through the fact that David's place will be empty. Alidei zeh yizker Shaul alav. Through that Shaul will remember about him. It's an amazing concept. Here we have two opposite things. And it goes on with the idea that we started as the preface for this Maamar, which we'll learn in Mitzvah Hashem in the Maamar. Usually, what does a person think? There's two things and they're opposites. Either you remember something or the thing is missing. You remember something means it's there in your mind. It's missing means it's not there. Here we're saying not only do they happen together, one results in the other, but it's the same word. How is something remembered? Through the fact that it's missing, that it's lacking. And it's the same thing that we're going to see in the world. It would seem like there's two separate things, two opposites. There's a lokos, there's godliness, there's ruchnius, spirituality, which is the light of Hashem, the reality of Hashem. There's a world that hides and conceals over this godly light, because that's the whole existence. Olam comes from Helem. It's a concealment. It doesn't allow the realization of the reality of Elokus. Seemingly, these are two opposites. There's the Yipaked, the lacking, the missing. That's the world. There's V'nifkadeta, remembering about Hashem. That's not the world. That's the opposite of the world. Seemingly, if we want to be able to get Mashiach, which is revealing godliness, how do we get that? By running away from the world. Comes along now the Rebbe Marash in his Maamar, and he says, take a look at Rashi. When is David remembered by Shaul? When does Shaul realize about David? When his place is missing. V'nifkadeta ki yipaked meishavecha. His place is empty. That's how he's remembered. They're not two separate things. They're actually the same word, because the concept and content is the same. And now the Rebbe Marash continues to explain what that means. And not just what that means, and how this is actually, when we read Vayomer lo Yehonasan Machar Chodesh, in the simple meaning, why are we reading it? Because it happened to be that this happened on Erev Rosh Chodesh. Chassidus explains, no, this actually explains the whole point of Erev Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh, but even more than that, Erev Rosh Chodesh that leads to Rosh Chodesh. And that we see over here now in the continuation of the Maamar of the Rebbe Marash. Umamshich ba'Maamar, the Rebbe Marash continues to say, Tatam shenemar v'nifkadeta. The loiv in his karta v'chayetze bazem. Why does the pasuk use the word v'nifkadeta rather than v'nizkarta or the like, which means you will be remembered? Shev'nifkadeta gam loshin yichud. Now we're having a third meaning to the word pei kuf dalid. We saw two meanings. One is that it's missing. The other is that it's remembered. Now we have a third thing, which is yichud, intimacy. Keloshin razal chayav adam livkoi des ishtoi chulu. It says in Chazal, chayav adam livkoi des ishtoi, a person is obligated in the simple meaning to remember his wife. What does that mean? That before a person travels, he has to have intimacy with his wife. That's yichud, the oneness, and that's something which is before a travel, before going on a distance, before you pocket, before the person is missing, before he's gone, before he goes away. There has to be has to be the idea of oneness, yichud. He has to become unified with his wife. Chayav adam livkod. What's the word? Pei kuf dalid. What does that mean? So the Rebbe Marash explains, Ki shaolu bina. Shaul is the level of bina, k'moishe kasuv shaul mercheves hanar. It says in the pasuk. Now, even though that shaul was a different shaul, but we take that the word shaul itself means bina recheves hanar, the broadening of the rivers. When the river becomes strong, the rapids, and the river runs powerfully. That's recheves hanar. It becomes stronger and stronger and broader as it goes along. That's bina. Bina is understanding something, and as it's understood, we take a concept and understand it more and more. It becomes deeper and deeper, and it leads from one thing to the other. That's the sheresh hamidus de zah. That's the root of the midus of zah, which means zah, zer anpin. The midas, the emotional attributes, they come from the intellect and understanding from bina. And that's actually Shaul himself, because Shaul was one who his mishichmei v'mala gavaya mikolam says about him that his shoulders were above the head of all the people. Shoulders, shechem, shows on something that's drawn down. It comes from the head, from the intellect. And that's the midas, the emotional attributes of a person. The shichmai, the emotions, the emotional attributes in Shaul were higher than the head of everyone else. Shaul's power was in his bina, his understanding was so powerful that his midas that come as a result of bina, they were stronger and more powerful than the intellect of everyone else. That's the idea of Shaul. And like it says in the pasuk, Mi bara eile. The pasuk says, Su mare meinechem. Lift up your eyes to the heavens and take a look. Mi bara eile, who created these? And Chassidus explains this to mean the mi. Bina hu asheresh di'ela midis. Me, who, which is bina, because bina is understanding, it's contemplating, realizing who, his baninus, contemplation, bara, that's what creates eile, these which are the midas. And that's in the simple meaning of the pasuk as well. Su mare meinechem urumi bara eile. Lift up your eyes to the heaven and see and realize, think about, contemplate, me, who, realize and understand who created this. Understand the greatness of Hashem in a way of understanding, and that creates and that brings about eila midas, that a person feels that an emotional connection to Hashem as a result of his understanding the greatness of Hashem. That's Shaul. Shaul means bina, the idea that is contemplation, deep understanding, which brings to the midas. David Malchus. David, on the other hand, is the sphere of Malchus. David is the small one. David, it says, Hu HaKatan. He's the small one. David is the one who's involved in the world. About David, we say, Vavaye imoy shalacha kemoise. What does it mean? Hashem is with him. The halacha is always like him. David, even though Shaul's understanding was much more powerful than David's. But David was the one who was able to draw it into the world, to bring it into the physical existence of the world, and that's why halacha k'maisai. What's halacha mean? Sometimes you have a person who his understanding is far superior to another person's. But nevertheless, the halacha is not necessarily like him. We say that very often the halacha is not like Rabbi Meir, because lo yachlu chaver of lamed al seif daite. Rabbi Meir's depth was much deeper and much broader than everyone else. But halacha is something which has to be understood and be able to be brought down into the world. Beis Shammai, it says, were mechudadim tfei, they were much sharper than Beis Hillel. But Beis Hillel were the ones who were able to draw it down into the world, and that's what the halacha is. David is the one who brings things into the world. Shaul is the one who understands in depth. Two separate things. Think about it in the two ideas that we spoke about up until now. Shaul is the spiritual one. Shaul is the one who's involved with me, with understanding, with contemplation, with recognizing godliness. David is the physical one, the one who brings it into the world. Two opposites, two different ideas. Two things that seemingly don't go together. Now what do we say? David. That's why it says v'nifkadeta. The word pei kuf dalid, which means connection, not just connection, but unification, where it becomes one. That Shaul remembers David, but not just remembers David in a way of yichud, hainu, which means sheyiye yichud za, sheshar shemibina Shaul umalchus David. This is what it's all about in our world. Unify. Take za, which comes from bina, and David, malchus, and put them together, not just put them together, make them one. What's that yichud? That's what we say every morning before Baruch Shamar. And it's not just before Baruch Shamar. The Rebbe brings in a Yom Yom that there's many people who say it every time they do a mitzvah. Our minhag is we say it once, and that one time continues on for the entire day. Because that one time is supposed to suffice for the whole day. But the concept is actually something which is every time you do a mitzvah, the purpose of the mitzvah is l'shem, yichud, kudsha berichu, shchinte. Yichud, the unification of kudsha berichu. Kudsha berichu is za, kudsha, that is holy, above the world, berichu, drawn down into the world, into the midas, through the lights of za, of chesed, through yisai, that are godly light that shines into the world. Shchinte is the Shechina, that's Malchus, that's resting and residing inside the physical world. Our purpose, which that's Dira Batachtainim, the purpose of everything, every time we do a mitzvah, we take a physical object and we do with it a mitzvah which is connected, bringing down the godly light into the physical world. Yichud, Kudsha, Brichu, Shchinte, that's what we're accomplishing as a result. That we're unifying the Kudsha, Brichu and the Shechina. This is the meaning of Yichud, Shaul, and David. Take Shaul, which is Zah. Shaul, which is Bina, the understanding, the spiritual understanding, the spirit that expresses itself in the spiritual light, which is channeled in Zah, in Zeramp, in Chesed, through Yisai, the different channels of godly light that shine. Unify it with David, Malchus, Shechina, down here in the world. That's Dira Batachtainim. That's uniting spiritual and physical, bringing godliness and bringing it into the world. That's the meaning of Nifkadita. Shaul Yivkaides David. Shaul remembers David, meaning Shaul and David become one. The godly light that's above the world becomes one with the light that's in the world. And now the Rebbe continues to quote from the Rebbe Marash. V'zehu ha'kesher. That's the connection between V'nifkad Toki Pakid Meishavecha and Machar Chedesh. Kiber Ev Rosh Chedesh Hu Helim V'Hester Halavana. On Erev Rosh Chedesh, the day before Rosh Chedesh, the moon is completely and totally concealed. To the extent that the moment before the Mailad, before the rebirth of the moon, it disappears totally. There's nothing left of it, not even one dot. As a result, as a result, afterwards there's machar, tomorrow. Chodesh, the renewal of the moon. Mailad halavana michadash, the moon is reborn, which means yichud shimsha v'siyara. What's the rebirth of the moon? The moon now shines and reflects the light of the sun. Beforehand there was also a moon, afterwards it's the same moon. What does it mean that the moon was totally disappeared? Meaning it wasn't reflecting the sun's light. Now it is reborn, it starts again to reflect the light of the sun. Now it's an amazing idea, the whole concept of the moon. The moon is something that there isn't anything like it in all the other planets, in all the other stars. There's no such a thing as the moon in anything else that we have in our physical world. The moon is something that has cycles. It becomes less and less, not the moon itself, but the way it reflects the light of the sun. Less and less. It has a cycle of a month until it totally disappears. You don't see it at all. It starts again. That's called the Chodesh. That's the months of the year. The months of the year are compared to the moon because that's exactly what happens with the month. They start. There's in fact no such a thing as a sun month. The sun doesn't have months. The sun has years. A year is a complete cycle. A month is a complete cycle, but it's a cycle which is different every single month of the 12 months. 1 month it's 29 days, 1 month it's 30 days. The cycle changes. The year is the exact same repetition every single year of everything that was last year. 1 month is Tishrei, another month is Cheshvan, 2 totally different months. A year has in it Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, etc. The month starts, continues, goes around until it disappears, and then it starts again. That's the moon. What happened with the moon? When the moon complained, you can't have the sun and the moon, which will be the same thing. And Hashem said to the moon, go make yourself smaller. What does it mean, make yourself smaller? So in Kabbalah and Chassidus, it talks about the idea that Hashem took away from the moon its inner light, its inner essence of what it itself has. Hashem said to the moon, go take out everything that you own on your own, become a mekabel, become a receiver that receives from the sun. But not only that, it receives from the sun until it disappears. Once it disappears, it starts again. That's the idea of the moon. What does it start doing again? It brings again the light of the sun. The sun is light. The sun is shining. The sun represents the godly light in the world. The moon doesn't have anything. That represents the physical world that doesn't have godly light. After it disappears, then it starts again bringing down the godly light. Yichud shimsha v'siyara. And that's what the Rabbi brings here, that it's the same thing as is in the moon, is also in Malchus. Because that's what Malchus is also. Malchus is the Sphira that comes into the world that doesn't have any godly light and creates a world. Malchus, when Malchus has a total bittul, it disappears, its place becomes empty, it becomes missing. That means David, which is Malchus, is missing. Then Al Yedei, through that fact, Al Yedei zed dafka v'nifkadeta yichud Malchus imzah, specifically for this reason, and specifically as a result of this, is they're able to be now v'nifkadeta, that Malchus and Zah get together. That now Malchus and Zah become one. Malchus, which is the lack of godly light, and Zah, which is the godly light in the world, they become one. Now the Rebbe continues, the The Rebbe is adding to this, to what the Rebbe Marash explained. How does this happen? Why does this happen that on Rosh Chodesh the sun and the moon become totally one until the moon can reconnect to the light of the sun? How does this happen? How does it happen that the sun and the moon now become one? It's not just that now there's a reconnection between the sun and the moon, because the connection between these two are two opposites seemingly. The only way that happens now is that there comes something higher. The Sphira of Keser, which is above the Hishtalshlus of the world. Because according to Hishtalshlus, the sun is the sun, the moon is the moon. How could they become together? The sun is the godly light shining, the moon is the lack of thereof, of the godly light. Take them together, how? Through Keser, which is Makiv, the essence. The essence is higher than any type of Ishtalshalos. It's higher than being limited, than being defined by any revelation or not revelation. That enables, this is the essence makes they can come together now. Like it says in the Pasuk, Batara she'itra loy imoy. The crown that his mother crowned him on the day of his chasana, on the day of his marriage, which means that in order that there should be the unification of Zah and Malchus, which in general Zah shows on masculine, the giver, and Malchus shows on feminine, the receiver. How can the giver and receiver get together? Chasunasai, the marriage, how can they get married and become one? How does this happen? It's as a result of Al Yedei Shenimshach Loi Atara Keser. Through the fact that there comes into it the crown, which is Keser, which is above both. How does Keser come to Zah? How does it come that what's above the world comes and is revealed in the channels of light that shine into the world? That comes through Bina. Because Bina is the source of Zah. And that's why we say, Atara she'itra lo imay, the crown that his mother crowned. The mother is Bina, the source. Through Bina, through this understanding and realizing the essence of godliness, we now bring down something which is even deeper, higher, above both. And as a result, they both go together. Now says the Rebbe, we can understand even more the connection between Machar Chedesh and V'nifkad Taki Pakid Meishavecha. Why? Kinyin Machar Chedesh. What does Machar Chedesh mean? Tomorrow there will be a renewal, which means the renewal that comes tomorrow is as a result of what happens today, the day before Rosh Chodesh, which is Mashal Yidei Helem V'Hester Alavana Shebe'erev Rosh Chodesh. As a result of the concealment of the moon on Erev Rosh Chodesh, that the revelation, the light that's in the moon becomes totally hidden. Through this total bittul, now there becomes the unification again. Why is this? Because lefisha bittul dalavana. Mashim isalemes umistateres actually nisha ba'afilu nekuda, the total bittul of the moon. That he hides, it concealed until it disappears totally. Bittul reaches the essence, which is keser, that's above ishtalshlus. From keser now there comes through bina the power for making one the sun and the moon together. Why is this? Why bittul reaches the idea of Keser? What's the whole point of Keser? It's above Ishtalshalos, it's the essence of godliness. What hides? What doesn't enable that when there's an existence? The whole point of the essence of godliness is the reality that doesn't give place for any existence. When a person through avodah, and it's the same thing, that's expressed by the moon, the idea of total bittul, the realization of I don't exist. When I don't exist, then there's the keser, the crown, the essence of godliness, and this enables there to be the light and the concealment. They can now go together and they become one. Shalidei she pakid makim meshavish shel David Malchus. Alidei ze even if kadid David alidei shol. That's the idea of kadid pakim meshavach. Just like on erev Rosh Chodesh, the moon disappears as a total bittul, and as a result, now there can become the oneness of godliness in the world. Also, over here, there's the same idea that through the fact that you pakid makim meshavish shel David, that Malchus is totally lacking, missing. His place is empty. He totally disappears. Just like in the simple sense. When David's place is empty, that's when Shaul remembers him, because if David's sitting there, not necessarily will Shaul even realize his existence. Here we're trying to test, in the simple meaning of the story, we're trying to test Shaul's reaction to David. How do we see a reaction to David? If David's just sitting by the table, not necessarily will it bring forth any reaction. When David's missing, when he's not there, then Shaul remembers him, he realizes that he's there. He realizes his existence. Why is this? In the deeper sense, through bittul. When there's a total bittul, then there becomes the real essence. And through that, bina can bring down keser into Malchus, so that Zoh and Malchus can get together now. So far in this paragraph, we explained the general idea of Maamar Vayomer. Maamar Vayomer means tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. What causes that? When there's the day before Rosh Chodesh, there's a missing. And what does that mean? Chodesh, the Rosh Chodesh, is the idea of Malchus. The moon, which is Malchus, which is the godly light that's inside the world, the Shechina, the godly light that resides in the world. The whole point is to connect that with the revelation of godliness that's above the world. And that comes through Keser. How does one reach that? Through bittul. When there's a total bittul, then there comes Maamar Vayomer. There becomes the essence of the unification between Zoh and Malchus. Now the Rebbe asks a question, v'tzarich la'avin, t'v'nifkadet ha'lashin zikarin v'lashin p'kido yichud, v'yipaked lashin chisarin him l'chayda, shnei hafchim v'echefsher shal yidei yipaked yiv'nifkadet. So the Rebbe now asks a question, and the Rebbe in a moment will explain the question. The question is, in the end of the day, how can the two opposites come together? Remembering is existence of spirituality, of godliness. Lacking, missing is concealment, the fact that it's missing, meaning that godliness is not revealed. In the end of the day, how can the two come together? Which in deeper meaning means, how is it possible that the world and godliness that's above the world, how can they be together? They're two opposites. Physicality and spirituality don't go together, they're two opposites. How can we reveal Mashiach in Galus? It's two opposites. And the Rebbe says, "V'avshi pakid meishavecha, zeh shenechsar makim meishaveh, kasher iminina bittul." Even though we explained already in the last paragraph that the fact that the place is lacking, the fact that the place is missing, that there's an emptiness, that's the idea of bittul. Bittul magia b'keser, and like we said, bittul reaches keser, the fact that I am not. That reaches Keser, so it does work and they can become one together. Nevertheless, the Rebbe asks the question, the power for the unification comes from Keser. Mikol Makim, the fact that the meaning of the word means that's the most powerful idea of it all, is its meaning. In Lashon Kodesh, is that yipaked means lacking, mashma, that implies the zesh yipaked meishavecha hu tam al v'nifkadeta ki yipaked meishavecha. It implies that the reason For v'nifkadita. Why are you remembered? Because your place was missing. What does that mean? We explained that once you have bittul, then through bittul there comes keser, which is above everything, and there's able to become the connection between Zoh and Malchus. But it's not just that. When we say nifkadita ki pakid moishavecha, that means it's not just the bittul, it's actually the missing, which that's the gashmi, is the lack of spiritual light. That brings the spiritual light, but how's that possible? Not just the bittul. The fact that you're lacking, you're missing the light. That brings v'nifkadet. And the question is, we have to understand, how is it possible? Yes, we understand that when there's bittul, so you reach keser. Fine, that works. But v'nifkadita is not bittul. The word v'nifkadita, yipaked moishavecha, doesn't mean bittul. It means you're lacking a godly light. You're lacking the realization of Elokus. How could that bring to the realization of Elokus? You're in a physical world that doesn't see godliness. How does being in that physical world until coming on Erev Rosh Chodesh to a time when you're totally missing? There's nothing there. How could that bring that as a result there comes godliness, the godly light comes? Move on. And another question, as a continuation to this question is, the fact that it says the word yipaked, lashen pkida, if we only wanted to say your place is missing chaser, it should say yichaser. Why does it use the word yipaked, which the word itself means remembrance? Not just remembrance, but unification, which means the ultimate spiritual light of godliness. Mashma, shashaychos the yipaked levenifkadita. It implies that the connection between yipaked and venifkadita, is not just that when there's missing, it brings v'nifkadita. And in the deeper idea, bittul brings to the hamshach of keser, ela shebi paked atzma yesh behelem in v'nifkadita. In the paked, in the missing, there is in a concealed way, there's the idea of v'nifkadita. And that's something which is mind-boggling. And like we said earlier, and this is a continuation of what the Rebbe is saying now, how could that be? You're saying that the lack of godliness not just brings a greater godly light. The lack of godliness, the gashmi is the helem, the galus itself. And this is what the Rebbe explained so many times, that goyla and gula are one word. Goyla is galus. Goyla is concealment. Goyla is locked up. Geula is redemption, revelation, amazing, everything's great. They're not one, they're two separate things, they're two opposites, they're two polar opposites. And yet we say they're the same exact word, just one has an aleph inside it. What does it mean just one has an aleph inside it? That in essence the aleph is not changing the word. All the aleph is doing is revealing in the goyla, the gula. But how's that possible? And that's exactly what we're saying over here. V'nifkadita ki pakid moishavecha. The pkida, the lacking, the hiddenness, the fact that you're not there, that David's not there, the fact that Malchus is not there, mean godliness is hidden, it's gone, it's not there. Not only that brings to v'nifkadita, to the higher godly light. This is in itself, in essence, the same exact thing as the godly light. That doesn't seem to make sense. That's something which is mind-boggling. It's something which is totally beyond understanding. So, Mitzvah Hashem will continue with the continuation of how the Rebbe explains this idea in Ois Beis and further in the Maamar.